Today on the CIO Lifeline, we have Jason Gumpert, Managing Editor of MSDynamicsWorld.com, the leading online and independent information source to Microsoft Dynamics. Don't go anywhere. Jason, how are we doing this evening?
Great. How are you, Tony?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining. So, Jason, as noted, you're the managing editor of MSDynamicsWorld.com. Tell us a little bit about what you do there and its role in the Microsoft community.
Sure. So my role at MS Dynamics World is really that I lead editorial for the site overall. So anything that's published as news or as a column or as an expert insight, it's probably gone through me. I'm one of the co-founders of the business and the site. So I've been at this for over 15 years now. I co-founded it with my partner Adam Berzin.
So 15 years in this current role. I try and think back 15 years in my career, IT related, and man, how the world changes in just a handful of years.
Yeah, and obviously the big one to me is fully on cloud. Fully on prem to partially mostly on mostly cloud now. But then also partly just I guess the good fortune to be sort of in the Microsoft channel over a span of time that things have evolved in a really exciting way. So what partners care about, what Microsoft customers care about in terms of business applications has really evolved and stayed very interesting and stayed very vibrant.
Yeah, and I'm excited to get some insight from you on the Microsoft roadmap, trends with AI. You mentioned cloud. That's a favorite topic of mine because I feel like for those that are thinking about that journey, there are some real considerations to be had. I mean, I feel like the cloud and AI, these are two freight trains that nobody's going to stop. Anyone in IT, especially leaders, should be paying attention to this. And if you haven't embraced it yet, or at least the inevitable future that's coming with it, now's the time. But before we dig into that, we first met at DynamicsCon Live 2023 in Scottsdale, Arizona, back in May, when you asked me to sit on a panel. I learned something. It was because the focus was what the consumers are expecting versus what marketers think they're expecting, if I'm saying that right. When you're going to market and you're trying to reach out to customers, what's the best approach? What does the data say, the stats say? But maybe elaborate a little bit more on that, because again, it was an interesting session for me.
The focus was really on B2B software purchasing and some of the preferences and the perceived preferences that marketers versus software buyers expressed to us through a survey that we ran. We've run this survey in past years, so this showed us some examples of how trends are changing, how some preferences of software buyers are changing, and how expectations of marketers are changing. So, like for example, we asked, software buyers, Dynamics users, for example, like sort of how do you like to start doing research when you're in this sort of fact gathering phase of your of a buying process, and and then we also ask marketers, what do you think prospective buyers are doing? What kind of content are they looking for? What kind of mediums are they using when they're in that intro stage? And then we could compare the answers. We heard from you. You were one of the panelists, which was super valuable, I think, to the people in the room.
All good. And one of the interesting points for me, I've noticed, I'll say, like the cold calls, your traditional cold calls that marketers or sales folks tend to take are less, or I'll say the quality of them are lessening when you think about traditional phone calls.
Interesting.
And how do you quantify quality? I guess that's in the eye of the beholder, but they feel more scripted and robotic than in the past. Or I'm seeing a lot more value would be through email and in LinkedIn. Now, the thing with LinkedIn was a little frustrating for me because you get an invite, hey, I'm just looking to expand my network, and there's some intro. So you accept it, and then boom, you get this email, hey, are you looking for blah, 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 blah. So some of that can be a turnoff. But here's where I do like it, both email and LinkedIn. It gives you a chance to digest the information at your pace. Because if it's a phone call or a voicemail, you're not getting the whole picture. You might not, in an email or LinkedIn, you're getting a link. I could see the profile of the person who's reaching out and kind of connect the dots for the company they represent, the solutions they provide. So I'd like to do that kind of homework. And from there, it just proliferates, right? Now I'm on YouTube looking for videos or even LinkedIn for video content.
Yeah, and I think there's creative ways to use it. In the right the right orchestration or the right engineering of or application of the different tools that are there for a marketer can be really effective if they can give you Tony, the right sort of access to an event or access to a document or just a post that's relevant to what you're thinking about. And then you can connect that back to who the people are on that team. And then when if and when they ever reach out to you, you can sort of tie that back. I can see how that can be really valuable. I think a lot of people, they're just not getting that experience yet because I think there's a lot of, my sense anyway, there's a lot of work that goes into making that happen.
And presentation matters. Creativity and presentation
Yeah.
matter a lot to me. So if you go to email, I mentioned the robotic scripted nature of the traditional cold calls, or at least that's the trend I see or I've been experiencing. But then you get email and you can have the same kind of robotic flow, but usually, and I've bit on this a couple times where like the last email they're going to send is like a multiple choice question, and one of them has, something to the akin of off, or something, not that they would say that, but the creativity that goes into, and it gets me to crack a smile. I'm like, you know what? All right, let's learn a little bit more. It gets me every time. If I think back to that panel, there were some members in the audience that just had that likability about them. I don't know how else to describe it. Whether eclectic or you could tell they had a sense of humor and just what they were saying. And there was one individual in particular that came off of, well, the data says that this burr burr burr, instantly closed off. You could be giving me gold, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's such a art and a science to it. I don't envy anybody in that space because it's really tough.
Marketers have limited capacity, right? They have to choose what kinds of campaigns they're gonna invest in building, what they're gonna invest in writing or branding, what kind of projects they're gonna pursue. Just like any other job, you only have so much you can do. So a lot of what I sensed from them, maybe sort of under what was said in general, is they're trying to figure out sort of where to put not just their dollars but their time and their effort to give their sales team the results that they want, give their CEO the results, show that their budget is worthy for the next year, as everyone does.
Well, and so you have the demo, right? You have the traditional product demo.
Yeah, that came up a lot, right?
Yep. You have a proof of concept that's a little more involved. Maybe it's a demo on steroids. And then you have references. So these are the three I'd like to close this session on here. To close. So when I think about a demo, I'm okay with a canned demo because I expect flawless execution. I expect canned environment with limited data. It's really to showcase, and this is where you gotta think. Okay, now if I can envision this in my ecosystem, my environment, and versus a proof of concept, which drains a lot of time, internal team resources. You mentioned marketing dollars on the sell side, and how that's we have finite resources, both money and people. So when I think about tens upon tens of thousands of customers and items and in different locations and product mix, it's a proof of concept to fully capture the essence of what this would be in a production environment, I would say is next to impossible. On the references, the only point I would bring up and share is that I love references, but again, it comes with an expectation that you're going to spoon feed me a great reference. a success story.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in references that didn't go so well. Now, I'm not looking for scathing hatred and, have you on the banned list and suing you, but for ones that, yeah, you know what, we got a little bit into it and had to walk away, or we launched, but we launched with some caveats. That holds a lot, and it's not going to sway me. It to me is a representation of honest showcasing of the product and recognition that there is no one size fits all in most cases.
Yeah, and I think you're not alone in that. I know you're not alone in that. That just that came up in our survey as well. I mean, it was almost like out of nowhere, references and reviews is I think where we were asking about, but I guess same area. You can tell me if you disagree, but uh, buyers really want to know more about what the marketplace thinks of a product, the good and the bad, and I think maybe they're coming to expect that quite quickly.
So let's talk about the Microsoft roadmap. So in your line of work, I'm sure you get a lot of exposure to what's coming, and maybe some privileged information that you may or may not be able to divulge, of course. But yeah, I'm very excited to what you're seeing coming in that Microsoft world.
Yeah, well, as sort of a media person, I get a certain level of advance notice every now and then. I'm certainly not like an MVP who has an NDA with Microsoft and is seeing things on a regular basis. So we just came out of the same week as Dynamics Gone Live was Build, which was one of Microsoft's big events, big international events every year focused on developers, and they made some pretty big news at that event. And those were some of the real highlights I think are going to kind of carry us through the summer. If you look at what Microsoft's going to be talking about and what um, partners are going to be talking about to try to keep excitement and enthusiasm high when it comes to Microsoft Biz Apps. You know, just thinking about where things are. I mean, the two that are the biggest sort of front of mind are CoPilot and all the AI services that go along with that, and then Microsoft Fabric, I would say, is the other one that really kind of is capturing people's excitement in the IT space, and what that really means for the future of data services and data analysis.
You mentioned Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft Fabric. So for our listeners, can you briefly summarize each one, like the essence of what it's bringing? I know you said Copilot's rather broad, but I think about Viva Sales. I don't know if that's under the Copilot umbrella or a separate product. But Microsoft Fabric, I'm not real keen on what its intent is.
I'll give, as sort of not a real technologist these days, I guess I would call Copilot. It's not one thing. I mean, it's sort of an umbrella term at this point for, um, Copilots, plural, are being sort of deployed in various workloads within sort of Microsoft's commercial cloud these days. So everything from productivity tools, it spans everything from Office 365 and Microsoft 365 tools to Power Platform, to Dynamics 365, to Viva Sales, like you mentioned. The way I've been thinking about Copilot, especially in the context of Power Platform or Dynamics 365, is it's sort of like a highly controlled sort of governance layer, if you, perhaps governance and data access layer that kind of keeps the craziness of OpenAI's large language models from kind of ruining businesses, both in terms of data access and data, uh, you know, what data shown.
It certainly does. Viva Sales is one example. If you're an hour long team session and let's say you can't make it and someone recorded it, I got to believe you're kind of in the single digit percentage of those that actually take the hour to watch the recording. Um, but what the Viva Sales add-on did was it provided a full transcript of the meeting, so all the participants and word for word what they said, and then it gave a summary and it broke down an hour's worth of content into summary bullet point form. And even if there was a call out for to-dos for any one team member, it would summarize what that to-do was. And if it was, hey, we need to meet further on this, it has access to my calendar and can suggest an open time slot. And it's not a delivery mechanism. I think you phrased it perfectly. That's why I kind of like the CoPilot branding. It's starting to resonate with me now. Whereas it's not an autonomous decision maker. It's helping you frame up an email. And to that point, I could hit a button and it puts the draft into Outlook that I can massage and twist, make my own before I hit send. I can even ask for a different mood for the email. It could be less formal, or, pick your mood.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's interesting to hear that that's working well for you. The market's obviously pretty hyped up about the possibilities. I think there's a whole range of things that are overhyped. We can maybe get into that too, but yeah, I think so far what we're seeing is it's resonating with people, and the different use cases. They're not all going to stick, I don't think, but some of them will.
What about Microsoft Fabric? What's the goal for that product line?
I'm definitely not a Microsoft Fabric expert, but my take on it is that it's a fairly important step in sort of harmonizing the various data services that are now all in the cloud that used to be, in data centers, and taking them and adding one more layer over or under, however you want to look at it, all over like Synapse and the various sort of data science and data engineering capabilities there, Data Factory, to kind of unify them with something called OneLake. You can bring your data into Fabric for analysis, and easily pull up Power BI to start working with that data once it's sort of been stored for analysis in the right format.
So we use Business Central SaaS, Dynamics Navision, a couple of different on-prem versions, Dynamics CRM, but there isn't perfect harmony between them in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's frustrating. It's why these integration companies like your Kingsway Soft, your E1s, that's why they're thriving, because it doesn't mash the data or intelligently link between the two. And even something as simple as pricing decimals that are supported in CRM versus the ERP products, they're a mismatch. I mean, if you're telling me Fabric is just going to be able to mash these things together and collectively connect the data without this effort and middleware need, sign me up. I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know if it promises that. I think what it does promise is sort of an easier path to putting your management policies in place, to doing or to doing, if there are translations of data to do, or mapping, or refactoring, all those types of things before you start doing analysis. I think it gives you one central place to do that. But yeah, it certainly doesn't do away with some of these integration platforms that still remain. I agree with you; those are super critical for so many customers, and that doesn't go away.
But if I'm an integration partner, I'm starting to perspire a little bit. Am I right?
I think every ISV is perspiring, but I think what they have that Microsoft never has, what ISVs always have that Microsoft never has, is sort of this deep knowledge of what their customers need, especially in the biz app space.
Let's just jump right into trends and Microsoft Trends. And we'll just throw in the Power Platform in there too, because I do see that Microsoft is, I'll say, all in on Power Platform and the different components that are within it. Now, where I grit my teeth is there isn't a Power Platform master SKU. If you want to do this, it costs you this. If you want to do that, it costs you that. I think the analogy I always like to go to is streaming services. It's Paramount Plus. It's only $20 a month. Disney Plus, $15 a month. You have $15 right now, and so. But you think about, then you have Netflix, and I like Pandora without the ads, and I have Amazon Prime and Amazon, blah blah. This adds up, and by the way, you need to pretty good solid internet connection to run the whole thing, or forget it. And if the internet connection you're buying with, if you tell that provider, oh, I don't want TV, then they jack up the internet rate because you're not bundling with them. I mean, it's maddening and it's very expensive. But anyway, I digress. But when I think about trends, again, I like your take on Power Platform, where you see that going, but also AI, like you mentioned CoPilot and AI and Microsoft. I mean, I think to date they're still the largest partner investor in OpenAI. I think it was 10 billion years ago. I can only imagine
Yeah,
what the investment is now.
49% ownership.
49%. There you go. And if anybody who's used ChatGPT, I think about, I need a go-to-market strategy for blah blah blah, and it just woof, it articulates, it has flow to it. It gets you 80% there. So when I think about content creators and even programmers, I mean, the amount of time programmers take just getting a basic framework in place or a set of classes, Chat GPT or some flavor of it with that backend, I really do think that this is going to have an economic impact, or I'll say job killer in certain industries. We always poke fun at back in the Industrial Revolution and Manufacturing 4.0 or industrial, we always say it's going to, and people adapt, but we're in the digital world now, right? And so if this AI based technology is going to get a company 80% there, I'll just stick to development. If you're a lean team, okay, but if you have a development farm of say 50 people, I don't know how you're not reducing headcount with
Yeah.
such a head start that this technology gives you.
Yeah, I mean, as you said that, I just want to mention before I forget. I mean, I think one of the front lines of this right now is the Writers Guild strike in Hollywood. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the
Yes, I
writers
have.
for TV and movies are on strike with the major production companies, and one of the big sticking points right now is just general agreement on concepts related to AI. And the primary one that I've heard voiced from writers who are on strike is through podcasts and news and stuff, is just that their big fear is that the studios will ask an AI engine to create a script or an outline of a script or whatever, and then they will be able to sort of take that as a pretense to saying, well, you're not really writing us a script anymore. You're just taking this, you're just editing, you're just spicing up this punching up this script that we got from our AI. So you're really just a sort of consulting writer now, and you can get we'll give you an hourly rate, and you're not full time, and your contract is much weaker. And that's the big fear, right, that these writers have, and that the
So
studios
that's
are
the
not.
driver. It's not that they're
It's
being replaced. It's that they're going to look at their role in script writing differently, or
right, and that
devalue it.
not that AI can write scripts, but that it's a pretense to sort of drive down labor costs, right?
It's such a frustration, not just in the movie
Yeah,
industry, but other industries. It's like,
yeah,
how much money do you really need to make? I mean, you make, look at Top Gun Maverick. What'd that cost to make? About 300 million, and it made over $1 billion. So you
yeah.
had 600 million in profit, and they're going to break balls because someone used AI to help get the script going.
Show me the money.
I mean,
Yeah, and these
that
studios,
greed
they don't
is.
want to say we won't use AI for that. Like they're whole, so far they haven't come to a resolution. I mean, I can certainly see analogs to that, sort of where in places where Dynamics products and copilots fit in. For example, one that kind of came across just a few days ago was one of the copilots for D365 marketing is, I don't really think of this so much as generative AI. I guess maybe it is, but the idea that you can do natural language queries to build segments to send a campaign to, right? So you want to send it to people who became customers who bought something in the last year from your business, or who attended some other event in the past. And so rather than kind of go into SQL and find
Yeah, SQL
the
or pivot
fields in the
tables.
right table to
Right.
do the joins to know all
Yes.
that's very difficult to do, you can sort of say in natural language, build a segment based on customers who attended this event last year, and supposedly it may or may not be able to write that query for you correctly. And one of the selling points of that is like you don't need to hire marketing team members who have any background in data structures. You can just have interns, or you can have, people just out of college who weren't trained on data, and they can build your segments for you now. And so it's like that's sort of to me, the creeping signs that they're sort of edging toward like one of the advantages is like this hollowing out essentially of work teams, right? So you still need the very advanced senior people who understand in depth how the business works, but do you really need the people who are sort of on the ladder up from there, who have built up a lot of those skills from the current world, understanding data structures?
I feel like the lean mentality has been here for a while, so in small and mid-sized companies, you don't have, like dozens of one particular position that I think will get cannibalized by this AI technology as it continues to mature and embeds itself into the products we use today. Whether we want to or not, it's coming, and we just need to be ready for it and understand its limits and its benefits. But if so I feel like small and mid-size are maybe a little bit insulated. But when you think of these large companies, it has to be cannibalized.
No, every situation is going to be different, but as I start to see, Microsoft's very intentional about the way they put some of the messages out there about why they think a particular, like this marketing CoPilot, is so great. And when the examples that they put out there are how they no longer need skilled workers to build their segmentation, to me that's just an example of like, okay, well that's clearly where they see sort of one of the angles to get more, to sell more D365 marketing seats with CoPilot built
Oh my
in.
god, their coffers are going to explode with the very real benefit to businesses that you'll need less headcount. It's kind of an
Yeah.
evil genius type of concept here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's that's sort of two-sided. It's cool, the technology is cool, but if you sort of think a lot about where it could be headed, it can also seem a little grim.
Microsoft and Amazon rule the world. Credits roll.
Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they sort of take your servers. Now your servers run in the cloud, and then it's like they also sort of take the expertise of your workers. Is that what this AI is doing? Sort of taking away, uh, things that were traditionally one of your differentiators, perhaps.
Well, cloud. I mean,
You know,
cloud kind of did that, right? Back in
right? That's
as
right.
cloud. It, database. The database administrator, I feel like is a dinosaur. It's still there. There's still a need, but
Yeah,
it's
and there's a
becoming
whole
less
new.
and less of one. It is.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole new. You could tell me probably better, but a whole new sort of career path on cloud architecture, right? And all the and
Yeah.
security expertise, and so that's all out there. And there's some very lucrative jobs, obviously, for people who are real experts in that area. But I don't think it's the same. It's not the same employment landscape.
Yeah. So with back on the Microsoft trend, cloud, the push to cloud, right? I mean, in fact, I in a previous episode, I posed a question. I did an episode on Microsoft licensing strategy, helping to put the pieces together because it gets complex quick and expensive. But I posed a question to my guests that if you have, if I want to go, the traditional ERP, it was Microsoft AX, an on-prem ERP system from Microsoft. That's their enterprise class. Now it's F&O. I think it's going through another rebranding. So apologies if that's already happened and I'm not aware. But F&O, it's cloud only, cloud only. And I think that's the inevitable future, and Microsoft is going to get there sooner than later. So that trend is real. And then the embedding of AI. Is there any other trends that you're seeing?
Well, I mean, I think the first one, not I would say not any others, but when it comes to cloud, on the one hand, it seems like an inevitability, and on the other hand, there are, I think, still AX customers out there on-prem, maybe fewer than there are on Nav and
Well,
GP,
Great Plains is a
right?
huge
And
market.
that story is not fully written yet. I mean, it does seem like an inevitability if you're on GP that you have to think about your options for 5 years down the road. But at the same time, I mean, not everyone is sold. And with NAV, there's similar, I mean, different stories, but kind of running along the same lines in different countries.
And think about the infrastructure. If I'm in rural America and I have a plant out in some random field, and my only option is satellite internet, yeah, you're hating life if you're forced to go to the cloud. So,
Yeah.
and it's a large country, it's a large world. So unless there's this purposeful investment to fiber everywhere, that part I do. I mean, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, there's enough market forces out there to keep that on-prem engine working, but it might just hit a wall and say, okay, here's an offering, but it has zero innovation, zero bells and whistles,
Right.
and until your area, your region, or your relocation involves having stable, fast internet, this is all you get. I mean, like you said, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Beyond that, what else would I say is a trend right now? You mentioned Power Platform. It's really that it's that component that sits right in the middle between sort of core, traditional development and pre-built, out of the box enterprise software, even if it's in the cloud. And it's sort of the new, to me, it's sort of the new customization alternative is largely how I end up thinking about it.
The premise was it was kind of low code, no code ability that the layman can essentially craft an application from scratch that talks to the database and presents the user interface to whoever the population is.
Mm-hmm.
I asked a hardcore SQL person and developer what she thought of Power Platform. And it was interesting because I was expecting sort of it's just not perfect and the premise is flawed and, for something super basic. She was excited. She goes, I am leveraging this on a daily basis because it helps me get some quick user-friendly front ends and connect to data, and I can focus on the more complex integrations and designs behind the scenes. I was like, wow. I said, that's a great answer.
Some of the best stories for Power Platform are sort of smart deployments at very high scale, at giant companies. I've seen cases from big energy companies, beverage companies, others where they've made it part of their core enterprise IT strategy.
For our final segment, how do you pay for all this? Now, again, I think there's two populations here to consider. First of all, your large business where you have bigger teams. Like I feel like the pay for is pretty easy. Like this technology does uh, lessen time. It can reduce headcount, and I say that. I mean, I don't say that lightly. I mean, these are people's livelihoods and that are potentially at risk here. But if you're a small, mid-size organization with lean teams, I feel like your pay for, if you call it that, has to come in the form of, well, we can defer hiring. CEOs and CFOs love that. That's their pixie dust. But the reality is, okay, if we're growing 10% of you organically and able to keep up with that with the same headcount, I'm pretty sure the cost deferment is real deal, right? Or deferred hiring, but outside of that, these tools come at a cost. Like I mentioned, Viva Sales. Now again, these can change. So, but the public price that's out there is $40 a month per named user. I love the named user concept. So shared licensing, that's gone the way of the dinosaur. Also, how convenient. So if you have a 200 concurrent user database, guess what? Now you got to pay per named user per month. So now your costs have just doubled or even tripled. Isn't that great? Anyway, how do you pay for this? So I mentioned about Power Platform, but there's probably 4 or 5 SKUs in there that each have their own cost. I mean, this can get really expensive really quick. And if you don't have your arms around this, that budget gets out of control. Because here's what Microsoft, if you don't use a particular license in a given month, you think they're not billing you for it? Of course they are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have a dashboard that shows you, hey, you're not using 50 of these licenses. I mean, that's just, you have to build that yourself. So just a word of caution, as cool as it is, you got to be able to pay for it too.
Yeah, governance with Power Platform is huge. I mean, Microsoft seems to be putting in a pretty decent effort, or they have over time to offer center of excellence tools, as they call them, that include, I believe, actual use metrics for your organization, and some of the management of licenses. But yeah, you can easily deploy licenses that don't get used, and making those decisions is not the same for every organization. So and you certainly hear this from consultants too, that they're always having a lot of conversations trying to untangle this with their clients to make the right decision, to not spend too little, not spend too much, not go over what they have. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and these are good conversations to have. I know I may sound like I'm being negative. I'm really not. I'm just throwing caution out there for those that are excited about the AI tools that are coming. You just have to make sure you get your arms around it, and highly recommend having someone from your respective development teams or a partner of yours craft a dashboard that can help give you that visibility into license use, both used and unused. I promise that the pay for on that is almost immediate. But it's also very exciting what this technology is going to bring to all of us, because if you haven't used tools like ChatGPT or Viva Sales or CoPilot, or even DALI, if I'm saying it right, the AI based capability to create images, I highly encourage it. It's very exciting, and we're going to see what the future holds. This has been a great conversation. Jason, thank you for taking time to join us today on the CIO Lifeline. Hope to have you back again. Always insightful. And be sure to check out MSDynamicsWorld.com for more exciting content, news, and stories in the Microsoft ecosystem. Thank you for everything you do. Tremendous benefit to the community. We're lucky to have you. Take care.
thanks, Tony. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
We do have fun on the video side, and
Right.
the outtakes and the credits and all that happy horse. But
And you wait, and whoever speaks first loses.
yeah, and I'm excited to get some insight from you on the other thing that I like when I think about is I said creativity, and what else did I say? Creativity. I'm blanking.